Okay.
Super.
Okay, let's start. Good morning, everybody. Just a moment, I have to click your way here. So basically, welcome to the German Limes, to the Rhaetian Limes. As you know, Rhaetia is one of the uttermost provinces of the Roman Empire, one of the most northernmost provinces. And basically, what we are talking about today is some greenish stones in the wood. That's World Heritage, what you see here. And you may imagine it's quite difficult. I mean, we have better sections as well, but this is quite difficult to explain to a general public why some greenish stones in the wood should be World Heritage. So if you compare it to iconic sites like the central sector on Hadrian's Wall, it's quite unfair that you do have well-preserved or well-restored sections and we don't. But that's how it is, and we try to make the best out of it. So let's go ahead, how we cope with this challenge, which is really a challenge. And hope it goes okay. Does not work. Why does it work? We have a technical problem. Okay. So basically what we are talking about, frontiers of the Roman Empire, 5,000 kilometers around the Mediterranean, and we are here in the upper German Rhaetian Limes. We have here the northern Rhaetian Limes band, and we will try to visit Ruffenhofen. It's a small fort, auxiliary fort of 500 soldiers, which is was basically a cavalry fort. And as you see, we do not have any iconic sites as you have here at Hadrian's Wall, Sycamore Gap. So, but we have a nice landscape as well. And basically what we do have at Ruffenhofen is landscapes, and we do not have any iconic finds. So that's a little bit difficult to explain. So what happened at Ruffenhofen is quite interesting. Ruffenhofen is the largest archaeological landscape we have in Bavaria, about 25-30 hectares, if I remember it rightly. And basically what happened, it was never excavated in full, but we have large geophysical surveys. So we do know the outline of the weak coast. We don't know the outline of the fort as well. And it was visualized with plans. Yes, can you see here? You see the headquarters, the Principia, the central buildings, some barrack blocks here. And at first, it was only an archaeological park, so people went there to walk their dogs and to experience the genius loci. And in the really beautiful, wide, open landscape. So after a while, local politicians said, well, we have to build a museum as well. And on political pressure, a museum was built in here with a so-called Limeseum, which is a very spectacular building. We'll see in a minute. A semicircular building. What happened is quite interesting. People did not go on the site anymore. They went to the museums and then went on the site. So it changed quite how people perceived the ancient site. First walking to the museum and then going to on the actual site to visit the beautiful archaeological park. So Ruffenhofen is a project which has been going on now for about 20 years. So one of the first installations they did even before building the museum, was to install a large model of the Roman Four. This model you see here is about 20 to 20 meters, so quite large, and can be seen from a visitor's hill, a small visitor hill. And what is important that this model is aligned directly to the Roman Four, which you see here in the background. So visitors can directly relate what they see on the model on the ground behind. So to be honest, I was quite skeptical if it would function, but it functions quite well as one of the highlights of Ruffenhofen. So there's another view of the model of the barrack blocks, and we are looking along the barrack blocks to the actual fort in the background, which is visualized by plans. So let's turn to the spectacular building. As you've seen before, it's a wide open landscape, and one of the challenges for the architect, it was a Munich architect, was to develop a building which does not interfere too much into the beautiful open landscape and has to enhance also the landscape. As I said before, we do have a problem at Ruffenhofen. We do not have any spectacular find, any must-sees, any must-haves. So what we have is lots of archaeology, which cannot seen, which is below the ground. And we have a beautiful landscape. So one of the challenges was how to bring the landscape into the museum. It's not so much about bringing finds into the museum, it's about to bring a landscape into a museum. So it's an interior view. And as you can see, go back here, it's organized sort of a spiral. So you enter and then you go up and you have from the very highest point, you have a nice view on the Roman landscape. So it's really to bring the landscape into the museum. So that's a view from the largest window at the end of the visitors of the visitors visit in the museum, and you can see the museum from the large window, the landscape and the planted Roman fortlet here. So you see the eastern from here, the eastern corner of the Roman auxiliary fort. So what do we know now of Ruffenhofen? As I said before, we have a very large geophysical survey, complete archaeological landscape. We have here the cavalry fort you saw before. We have some parts of the Roman vicus. We have the Roman cemetery as well. So all you have to need to explain how a life at the edge of the Roman Empire in Raetia functioned at a certain moment. So all structures you see here about to be dated about 200 AD. So how did we cope with the problems that we did not have any finds? In two ways. First was we pointed on a high quality virtual reality. Reconstruction was a central element for interpretation, and all the buildings you see here is based on extensive geophysical survey. So every building of the vicus is attested in the geophysical survey, and it was also attested a landscape survey to digital surface model from airborne laser scans. So it's quite a high quality model, and it is one of the unique selling points Ruffenhofen really has, is a high quality digital reconstruction. So Ruffenhofen is a very good example of bringing the landscape into the museum. And if you take it on a general view, landscape reconstruction in the past years, especially in Bavaria, but also in other European regions, has become a key aspect of interpretation in Roman museums. So we had another project at Ingolstadt where we reconstructed the Danube Limes. So the Danube up here, as it may have appeared in Roman times. The fortlet of Kösching with the ring vicus, as you can see, and some other small impressions of this landscapes reconstructions. So, to be honest, I was quite astonished that people wanted to learn about landscape in Roman times, about landscape reconstructions, which is quite a tricky thing to do. You have to rely on old maps from the 17th, 18th century. Of course, it's only approach how it may have been. It's based also on archaeobotanical analysis, if we have some. But I think we come quite close, and it's to explain people that landscape was not the same in Roman times as we see it today. So, one very nice example, coming back to Ruffenhofen, is a series of pictures we realized 1 year ago, 2 years ago, something like that. It's basically quite simple to show the development over time. So we start here above the development Ruffenhofen in pre-Roman times. And you see how the landscape changes in Roman times. So that is what it appeared about 200 AD. We go ahead. That's in post-Roman times, around 300 AD. And that's around in the 6th, 7th century with the early medieval settlement down here. So this was quite a lot of work. I mean, what you see now are nice pictures, but there are lies of really great brainstorming behind it. It's about, um, which is the next slide. What you really need for nice pictures is a sound archaeological support. So in Ruffenhofen, we had a film being realized. We had 10 Roman archaeologists for 8 minutes of film, which is quite an input. And you have to respect international charters. So you should, in theory, and it was also done in Ruffenhofen, publish your results, why you reconstructed things as you do reconstruct it. The problem is, if you create pictures, it will remain in people's minds. People take it for granted, and it has to be, it must be possible to trace it why you had these ideas. So it's quite simple. You must have a permanent quality control. You must have a lot of time, which is about 8 months. And you must have, which is very important, ability to endure jangled nerves, because it's really quite difficult to cope with multimedia guys. So probably it's better in the UK, I don't know, but it's a little bit difficult because of another way of tackling problems and tackling challenges. Okay, always Ruffenhofen. In Ruffenhofen, we adopted a UK approach of personal storytelling. As I said before, we do not have any spectacular finds, so we had to invent somebody, some Roman soldier, and we have a Roman inscription on a check piece of a Roman helmet, somewhat like this one here. And it's simply written, this helmet belongs to December of the Turma of Matthias. So we have 2 Roman soldiers who served at Ruffenhofen, Matthias and December, and we opted for December because it has such a nice name, which is easy to remember. December, easy to remember. And we created a whole story about it based on the archaeological evidence. So he enters the army. He is an auxiliary soldier. After having served in the army, he lives in the Vicus. He gets Roman citizenship and dies in the Vicus. And December, you will encounter him all over the museum, in multimedia, in films, in graphics, and even in reconstructions on special occasions with Roman reenactors posing as December. It was quite fascinating how bringing a UK approach to Germany did function very well. December now has become sort of a figure to be associated with Ruffenhofen, so it's quite special and it is known all over the region. So it was quite a success and successful experiment, let's say, and you can encounter him also in the museum itself, him with 2 naturalistic figurines. You see here one in not always in his battle dress, but also in his more normal dress, as soldiers would have walked in the during their service in the Roman fort of Ruffenhofen. What we have generally in Bavaria, in museums, is a very high standard in reconstructing figurines. This is an example of Greding, which is not so far away from the region Limes, but in the outside of the Limes, some kilometers outside of the Limes, a rich tomb around 700 AD with 5 Bavarian warriors who were killed at the same time in battle. And all you can see here is based on paleoforensic and historical evidence. So we had, before reconstructing them, a research of about 2 years with paleo DNA analysis and all the stuff you can do now, and then to have them reconstructed as you can see them. So it's quite naturalistic. So showing that in a museum is always a problem. You basically have 2 reactions. Children like it, grown-ups don't like it, but in any case you do have reaction what a museum should do, and you stimulate discussions. Another approach we try to bring into museums on the Bavarian Limes is to is a question which is very actual now all over Europe. The problem, the discussion of who are you, where do you come from, the problem of frontiers and migration. This is an example of Obernburg, which is around here on the upper German Limes, on the Main Limes. In Obernburg, we do have a lot of inscriptions naming us all different people from all over the empire. We have a commander from Algeria. We have a people from Italy. We have people from the Lebanon, from Iraq, and so on. So it is clearly was clearly a multi-ethnical, multinational society, and not so much Roman. So what people simply do not know if they come to a museum, that Roman is not Roman, that Roman did not exist in Roman times, but people came from all over the empire. So if you take the example of Obernburg, maybe 10% were really from Italy or from Rome, and the rest came from all over the empire. So it was really a multinational society. So coming back for a short while only to Hadrian's Wall, don't have to explain where these sites are, you know them best. And problem with Hadrian's Wall is bifold. I mean, you have a large, nice landscape, stunning landscape, and you have nice sites. But basically, if you see them first, it's only a lump of stones, old stones, important stones, which are not self-explaining. So for Germany, we adopted another UK idea, which you know well, Hadrian's Wall Interpretation Framework. I think John will know it very well. And we tried to adopt it for Germany. As you know, Germany, Austria, Slovakia, and Hungary are currently applying for World Heritage status as the module frontiers of the Roman Empire, Danube, Limes West. And we created, following Hadrian's Wall interpretation framework, an interpretation framework for the Danube Limes in Austria and Bavaria, which summarizes about 50 museums. The principles are basically the same: personalized storytelling, personalized interpretation, and so on. All the stuff you have in Hadrian's Wall interpretation framework. Naturally, you cannot copy if you have to adopt it to a national audience, to national specialities, but basically it's based on the idea, on the best practice example of Hadrian's Wall. So it's really about bringing Hadrian's Wall to another part of the Roman Empire. What we have along the upper German region Limes is watchtowers. We have about 500 or more than 500 watchtowers, and I must say local communities mayors love watchtowers. First idea that will come about is can't we rebuild a watchtower? The problem is no rebuilt watchtower looks the same as another one, which would be quite unusual in Roman times, Roman army. And so we have different models here. One of the best examples we have, and one of the most honest examples, I would say, is this one here, which can clearly be recognized as a modern reconstruction, but takes the form of a Roman watchtower. It's near Eining, where the Rhaetian Limes joins the Danube Limes. Watchtowers can also be interpreted in a different way for explaining, for giving explanation on the Limes. This is an example of Baden-Wuerttemberg. So it's a classical watchtower and a reconstructed part of a wall which is used for giving information on the Eurasian Limes, on the Upper German Limes and World Heritage as well. But it can clearly be recognized as a modern installation. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, we have a short problem here. If you go on the watchtower, which I just showed you at Osterburken, you will find this binocular here. And if you take a look through this binocular, you will find the Roman landscape reconstructed as it may have appeared in Roman times. So this is a technique we adopted on several sites around the German Limes, it's called archaeoscope. So we have here an example from Passau from the late Roman IV. And Passau, if you take a look, you look into the courtyard of the late Roman fort. You can see here, you may recognize this pillar here, which is basically these pillars you see here in the inner courtyard. You can also use virtual reconstructions to correct false iconic sites for tourists. As I said before, we do not have really iconic sites, iconic landscapes as we do have on Hadrian's Wall. In the 1980s, especially in Bavaria, there's quite a lot of reconstructions. And one of them, the North Gate at Weissenburg, has become a sort of iconic site for tourists. It appears on folders, on publicity for tourists and so on. The problem is it is wrong. It is basically too low. So what we did a corrected reconstruction, as you can see above here to compare it. So one story was basically missing. What happened is quite interesting. We had a feedback from visitors that our reconstruction is wrong and the actual reconstruction that you can see on site is right. So that shows you must be quite careful if you really apart from international charters which do not permit reconstructions on site or restrict it very much, you should be quite careful of reconstructing Roman stuff which remains in people's impressions. As you see, Weissenburg is a very good example of what can happen. So in another case at Poerring, which is also a site on the Eurasian Limes, we opted for a different version. We realized a sort of steel visualization to show the height of Roman fort gates. It's a light steel construction with some plastic on it. The plastic now has been removed, but we'll see what you can do about it. And it's a really impressive. Everybody will realize that it is a modern reconstruction. It really gives you an impression on how impressive Roman military architecture could have been. It was meant to impress. It was meant to convey the power of Rome in the border regions, and it impresses also because of its simple height. What we have here is a height of 15 meters. So to 15 meters, you have to add some meters because most of Roman forts, at least in Bavaria, are on small hills, small elevations, let's say. So it may have appeared coming from below about a height of 20 meters, which is higher than anything barbarians would have known. What is interesting, after having reconstructed Poerring, it was sort of copied in Baden-Württemberg. This is Fortlet here at Osterburken. The colleagues at Baden-Württemberg adopted this approach and only showed the silhouette, which you can see here, of a fort gate, which is also very impressive if you compare the actual height here to the small modern houses you see behind. So that you really can see the difference, how the power of the Roman Empire was also expressed in architecture and Roman military architecture. Coming back to Poerring, we have some silhouettes of Roman soldiers. It is an approach which is adopted all over Bavaria. The problem is it's made of Corten steel. Corten steel. I'm not really a friend of Corten steel. It's basically when if architects want to convey the idea of being old, they use cortines, the rusty Roman riders. But it has become sort of a sign to interpret an element to interpret Roman sites in Bavaria. So just a very quick view. This down here, maybe it's different now, is some watchtower on Hadrian's Wall. Don't know where. But the whole German Limes, 550 kilometers, the whole World Heritage has a common visual identity, which you can see here. As soon as you stumble upon a sign here in these Limes colors, you know you are on the World Heritage. Okay, let's switch to a joint project, Bavaria, Scotland, exploring World Heritage with new media technologies. This was a project with Historic Environment Scotland and Austrian colleagues. Scottish, German, Austrian collaboration project. Our technical partner was in Austria, so that's why Austria is in it. For the archaeology, it was basically Historic Environment Scotland and Germany. We chose the region of Eining, I come back later, in Bavaria as a test module. So you can see the partners. So it was co-funded by the Creative Europe program of the European Union. So you can see European Union is not as bad. It may appear in the UK. It also gave money at the time. And you see the partner. So you see our office, you see Glasgow, and later Sterling Center for Digital Documentation Visualization, and Ediofilm and Medien in Austria. It was a project about 300,000 euros. This app was based on previous Bavarian apps. Our approach was to enhance these apps, to develop new features and bring them first to Antonine Wall, and then develop the new features, and after that bringing the newly developed features back to Bavaria. So it was really an exchange of international know-how. Why did we attack this very large project? Basically, we have, and that's true for all of the frontiers of the Roman Empire, a problem to connect sites to museums. The findings, the objects are in the museums, are not on site. And at least we could virtually bring back the site as the finds, the objects to the sites, and vice versa. How did we do this? We use storytelling techniques to engage with your audience. We used immersive new content forms, augmented reality, virtual reality. You'll see here an example from the German Limes. And we'll now go a little bit inside this new app. What came out from Advanced Limes app, as we will call the project, are basically two separate apps which are based on the same technical platform. An app, one for the German Limes, which is called Limes Mobile, and one for the Antonine Wall, which is simply called Antonine Wall. So it's basically based on maps. You see all the point of interest here. Here you can also choose different sites on a list, and if you go on certain sites, you will find here a list of what happens here, what you can see. You have simply text, image information. You can have films, you can have audio files, or you can imagine what is technically possible and feasible. So let's go in. We have text, image files, audio files, video clips, all following one of our three basic principles. Principle one is storytelling. Storytelling can be used for all the classical features. Let's say I listed here. Principle two, when developing the app, was active user experience. 360-degree views, augmented reality, 3D finds, and all the other stuff you can see here. Active user experience, virtual reality and augmented reality on Einig Weinberg. Recently, we had this. Sorry, I can go back. We had these installations here, which have a trigger on it. If you go with the installed app on it, the reconstructed site will appear, or here a little watchtower in 3D. Okay, another example of multimedia which is incorporated into this app. And as I said before, objects are very important, so we did a series of high-quality 3D scans like this fibula here, which basically comes back to our third principle, connecting museums and sites to bring spectacular finds back to where they were found, like this crossbow fibula, this arrow from Straubing, this is very spectacular, or simply some Roman statues. Okay, let's talk about money. As I said before, ALApp was based on some previous developments, mainly with Mobiles, Liebes Mittelfranconio, with a very potential partner, which was the Bavarian Saving Banks Foundation, who had Creative Europe, so the European Union, the Bavarian Office for Monument Protection, and Historic Environment Scotland. But to all these costs, staff costs must be added. So, however, what came out is a platform which can be used by everybody. Technical upstand and license for software about 5,000 euros, and the content must be developed and financed by local community towns or third parties. What we learned a lot of it, is if we have several fundamental rules for content development. What is really essential is quality control by an archaeologist, if possible, somebody who studied archaeology of the Roman provinces, which is even better. You have to respect legal aspects, especially the EU General Data Regulation Protection Act. It is important that we do not have any commercial touristic content on it, so you will not find Mildcastle pubs on it, for example. It focuses on the frontiers of the Roman empires and related sites. We make it mandatory bilingual content, local language, or German whatsoever, and English, and it's open source. So new technical features must be made available for free to all users of ALApp. So what came out? We have two existing apps, which is Limes Mobil for Germany and Antonine Wall. The Romanian colleagues already expressed their interest to use our platform for apps on the Dacian Limes and the Danube Limes, or the Danube Limes of the Romania, and maybe Hadrian's Wall is interested as well. What is important to know, that we have two versions. We have one version branded ALApp, which is available only for the FRE, and we have a white label version, which is also available for other cultural heritage purposes, but always non-commercial. Okay, that was the app. Let's turn to various other projects. This is an example of a subterranean excavation below a church in Regensburg, Niedermünster, where you basically see a heap of stones of various periods, but it's one of the core sites you do have in Bavaria for understanding the history of Bavaria. So basically what we did, we illuminated the various phases in various colors and introduced some multimedia in it, just to make it more understandable to visitors. What is really a problem is the collaboration with tourism. If you take a look at the operational guidelines, periodic monitoring, and I like it very much, this quote, problems and risks to be considered could include earthquakes, floods, landslides, as well as tourism. And it's basically what it is about. Tourism managers do not care about too much about historical accuracy, as you can see here, but mix various phases. You see here a Bavarian king meeting the Romans. that is a problem which has to be approached, but it's basically a problem of talking to each other and to try to understand each other's approach. What is very interesting in if you tackle the problem of tourism, there are sort of touristic equations, if you want to put it like this. Red is a color which is associated with Romans. Nobody knows why. It's maybe for Hollywood films where red is often used. It may be because it is known from Pompeian red and Pompeian wall paintings, for example. And what is also known, Palisade is always associated with a limes, and watchtowers associated with a limes, and military equipment, rusty Romans are associated with limes. So that's basically the elements what tourism managers know about the limes, and we have to build upon it. A very weird phenomenon, and probably it could be approached all over UK, is adopting the World Heritage Site in a modern interpretation for roundabouts. You have plenty of roundabouts in the UK, so plenty of possibilities to do it. I think it's not bad after all, just to make it visible to a general public where limes was. We have several of these roundabouts, and I think it's a very interesting development which could be considered also in other sites. Okay, that's the best about the limes, the chocolate you have in the fridge with the Roman watchtower. Thanks so much for your attention.
Thank you, Christof. That was excellent. Danke. Could you